Your school has SEL programming, flexible seating, and teachers who genuinely care. But your neurodivergent students are still burning out before the final bell. You've done the surface level work. The gap is not effort. It's that most SEL tools weren't built for the kids who need them most. The majority of kids who avoid school are actually neurodivergent, according to one study done in the UK. And they're not leaving because they don't want to learn. They're leaving because they don't feel safe. Vanessa Castañeda Gill built Social Cipher. That produces SEL video games designed by and for neurodivergent people. And she's here today to show you exactly what's missing and how to close that gap. For over 30 years, ODP Business Solutions has helped schools transform from whiteboards to smartboards. Why? Because when you get the right tools, everyone wins. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to revolutionize your school's learning spaces. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Staffing stability isn't just about filling positions. It's about what makes educators stay. Frontline Education's 2026 K-12 Lens Report highlights what districts are doing differently to strengthen retention and long-term support. You can download the full report at frontlineeducation.com/leaders. That's frontlineeducation.com/leaders. Over 1 million teachers rely on IXL because it's empowering, it helps them make better decisions with reliable data, and it adapts instruction based on student performance. You can get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. A principal I work with walked into her staff meeting last week with one clear next move on the culture problem she'd been circling for months. She didn't get there alone. She got there with Digital Danny. He's always there, never forgets, and he evolves with you. Get started with Digital Danny at myprincipalcoach.com/ruckus. That's myprincipalcoach.com/ruckus. All right, and Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm super happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're wearing your Ruckus Maker leather jacket. I've got my Ruckus Maker hoodie, so we're all set for today. I want to start with just like what it's like, right? When a psychologist sort of labels you, and what does that do, to a person?
Yeah. I think it definitely depends on kind of where you are with your own self-perception, your self-esteem, because for a lot of folks who are diagnosed with different forms of neurodivergence, sometimes it can be a relief. It can be an answer to, why you've done certain things the way you have or processed them a certain way. But for others, like for me, when I was in my journey, I was at, a really low point in my own self-esteem. I was young. I was 14 years old. And when it also depends on, the psychiatrists themselves and how they understand different stigmas and stereotypes of neurodivergence. So in my experience, it was kind of difficult because the way that my psychiatrist told me about this was not ideal for a 14-year-old girl to hear. It was very much like this idea of I am a girl with the brain of a boy, which has a bunch of other gender stuff just in there as well. And I think that many of the examples and representation that were pulled in to explain this were very limited examples of what autism looked like and was. It was very much like this, type of solitary genius savant person that can't connect with people properly. And I thought for a while I had to fit into that mold. So for me, the diagnosis was a source of shame for a while because I wasn't equipped with the right representation, the right sort of like stigmas that were broken, and the right tools.
Yeah. I had a post on LinkedIn that I was writing, and it was just about all the all the things that schools do, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, but just labeling students for better or worse, right? And then what that does, what that does to a student. So thank you, for sharing a bit of your story. You mentioned there in your answer, right, in our conversation, breaking out of the mold. So what helped? Like what worked for you after that moment? And then you were thinking like, all right, well, I don't know. Maybe that's right. Like breaking out of the mold. What did you do?
Yeah, so I would say that moment took like 6 years, to be honest. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and sometimes it's I mean, I think neurodivergence also is this ongoing journey. It's never something that I think that especially for a lot of overachievers, it's like, "Oh, I can win this. I can map this out. I can figure out a way to solve any like difficult or awkward situation so that I am never hurt again or so that I am not put at a disadvantage because of the way that folks see neurodivergence again." And the reality is that like it's just a lifelong thing. But those first 6 years were definitely difficult. After diagnosis, I was very much in this mindset of, yeah, oh, I have to fit into this mold. I am not someone that fits into that mold. And I think that for me, I was so scared of failure and I didn't think that connection was worth any type of risk. So I really
Mm,
just cut myself off from people and convinced myself that if I keep my head down, if I just stick to being the best student I can without connecting with anyone else, without worrying about friendships or anything, then yeah, I'd be fine. And very much I was not fine because I didn't have, you know, the actual like relationships with my friends in school that I could depend on. I didn't have much of a community. And so for me, I fell into a lot of mental health difficulties and issues. I had depression, anxiety, just like plummeted self esteem. And I hid my
mm,
diagnosis from the ages of 14 to almost 21 years old because I was just so scared that people would treat me differently.
mhm.
Yeah,
What do you mean by hid? Like from peers and from friends or?
yeah, it was from everyone. It was really
Mm,
yeah, from peers, from friends. I would like a lot of kids just thought I was weird and I like just kind of let them have that label cuz it was better than being autistic at the time. I was just so scared that and I masked very heavily. Like I was constantly masking uh
mhm,
and what that resulted in and a lot of students still suffer from this is they try to mask in order to please people, in order to be accepted, to fit in. And then as soon as they get home, they are just like a pile of stress and anxiety and just like frustration. And I would be lashing out at my poor mom every time I got home because I
mm,
had suppressed so much. And I think what really helped me turn a corner was a couple of things. I think that I didn't expect for my perception of like I need to be fixed to change. But when I developed this like love for neuroscience and just learning about the brain. And originally I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go into neuroscience. I love it, but also maybe I can fix my brain like this and then I don't have to feel pain again. I will be quote unquote normal, even though that doesn't exist. And so when I went into neuroscience, I became a researcher, I got published, and throughout that time, I realized that, my quirks, the things that people would label as weird were actually things that my colleagues and my friends that I formed at the time really enjoyed about me. And I felt more
mhm,
vulnerable. I felt like, oh, I can connect with people. It's just in a very different way.
mm,
So I started doing that work. And then because my interests were accepted, I started sharing them. My friends started sharing them with me, and that's how I really got into fandom. Like I got into things like Doctor Who and Star Wars and all of
yeah,
these things that I thought I had to keep hidden because they were signifiers being weird. And then through that, I was starting to find like pieces of my identity in the media that I loved. And I think that what was so effective about this media was that I could find autistic traits in these characters without autism being their whole story and like the only
hmm,
thing they're identified by. And I think that being autistic and ADHD, it's so important to develop this mindset of like, it is part of my identity and part of who I am. It is not all of who I am, and it's not something that needs to be fixed. And I think that's what I really learned by finding my people and finding identity through representation.
Right on. And we're going to talk about, some of those characters and
Yeah.
social cipher games in a minute. I want to go back. So 14, I want to go back a few more years to seventh grade, and
Mhm.
then we'll get to social cipher. But in the pre-interview, I know you talked about like you had this moment in seventh grade, and you were asked like, "Who do you think you are?" Right. So what was going on there?
Yeah, it was real interesting. So in 7th grade, I was in an algebra class, and it was, just a very, like, loud time in the classroom. We must have had like some sort of free time or something. And so all the students were, chatting away. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was definitely overstimulated. And so,
Hmm.
I needed to regulate in some way. And as many of us know, like a lot of students, when they can't regulate or don't feel safe or don't have the tools to self regulate, then it's going to result in outbursts. And that's what happened to me. So I was just so overstimulated that I just started yelling in class, and I had had an outburst, and then things started to quiet down. And as soon as they did, my teacher stared right at me and was like, "Oh, why did you do that? Like, who do you think you are?" And it was at that point where I also decided I hadn't had any of the tools yet, and I hadn't even had my diagnosis yet. So I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a signifier to me that I should never participate or speak in class again because I am terrified of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time and being judged for it." And so I
Mm.
think throughout especially my academic life, I was constantly that "who do you think you are" was ringing in my head anytime I had an interesting point for a book I was reading in literature class, or anytime that I might have had the answer to one of my like physics problems. I would just kind of sit back and stay quiet because I was so scared of getting it wrong,
Mm.
uh and saying something that wasn't fit for the situation, and that continued until my senior year of college.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, let's turn the page. Let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's talk about your social cipher games. What are those all about?
Yeah. So in my senior year of college, which much coincidentally, I guess, not so coincidentally, which is when I started gaining that confidence, and
Hmm.
to start raising my hand and everything. That's when I founded Social Cipher. So classic ADHD. I was in my dorm lounge and I was working on an assignment, and my mind started drifting. And I thought about, how much I had grown since being 14, and feeling like I was alone in the world, and like I was just some alien that didn't deserve friendship or community, or
Mm.
acceptance. And I was like, "Man, I have found a way to help people through the things I love. I've found people that I love and who love me in return, and I've really brought together, like, my personal experience, my professional experience, and I've come so far, and I think there's a way that I can use what I love and what I've experienced to create something for other kids so they don't have to go through what I did." And so I just whipped out a little notebook, and I started just like my brain does. I just started writing down like random words and connecting arrows to all of them. And it was just this
Hmm.
beautifully tangled web that I still have like under my bed somewhere. Like all these people and places and things that I was starting to connect in my own little neural network that I had written down. And that at first I was like, well, I want to pursue my PhD in neuroscience, or I'm going to use this as like a paper for grad school or something. But we started winning pitch competitions. We started, talking to folks and realized that we might have something that we'd be able to, actually bring to schools and classrooms all over the place. And so, what it is today is Social Safer. We build social emotional learning, video games, curriculum, and progress tools for neurodivergent youth, especially in like the middle and high school years, as
Hmm.
well as the professionals who work with them. And we use a diverse cast of neurodiverse characters that are based on, real people in our actual community, to really bring across ways for students to safely practice social interactions on their own terms and build self-confidence, self-advocacy skills, and just a better understanding overall of who they are and their place in the world.
Yeah. I know you're telling me the students love your characters. I'm sure they love the representation, but what else, what do they love about the characters?
Yeah, good question. They really love that our main character, Ava, who's an autistic 12-year-old star mapper, they love that she has pink hair. So that's just, I've gotten a lot of teacher texts about that one. They're like, they just love the pink
Yeah.
hair. But I think they just love that, like, I mean, I think it makes such a difference when they're based off of actual neurodivergent kids. And,
Mhm.
like the original character of Ava is based off of, a young girl of the same name. I've been playtesting with her since she was 6.5. She's 14 now. And she is actually she is a neurodivergent advocate in its own right. She's doing amazing. And I think for example, for Ava, we took things that she really enjoyed. Like she loves Super Mario Brothers. She just like has extensive knowledge of very specific niches. Like for her, it's definitely like historical figures in literature, and it's great. But so we really brought that into Ava, right? Like we wanted her to be a star mapper and have just this like vast knowledge of cartography and this interest in it. And we wanted to kind of defy this stereotype of like autistic people, always like not wanting connection or not having empathy, because a lot of the time, like many neurodivergent folks do crave connection. They do have actually like an excess of empathy a lot of the time. And so I think that, and I think another really cool thing that students resonate with is what we call her shutdown sequence. So
Hmm.
in a typical video game, maybe you'll see like little hearts in the corner, and when the character like falls or something, like they have a
Yeah.
certain number of lives, right? And
Right.
so in our video games, Ava has these little orbs, and they're called her mental fortitude, which is basically her ability to deal with like sensory stimuli and different things around her. And so when she gets to 0, she goes through what is called a shutdown sequence. So she gets really overwhelmed. And then she goes into this little other space where the student has to help her understand what she needs to get back to being regulated and feeling safe again. And then along with that, a lot of games will have things called like respawn points where a character can kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, get their life force filled back up and come back. And
Yeah.
so for Ava, that's what we call quiet space. And so she like jumps into this cute little bubble with her space corgi sidekick Mup, and she engages in her special interests, writes the little maps, and there's a little meditative music and a timer. And what we've seen from our classrooms is uh, that it has been modeling this behavior for students. So there's this shared language that is being developed with students where when they're starting to feel overwhelmed, they'll say, I think I feel like Ava right now. I need to go to my
Hmm.
quiet space. Or, yeah. And so that has been one of the coolest things. And sometimes we get pictures of teachers sending us like their own little quiet spaces that they've created in their classrooms, which is just the coolest thing.
Yeah, brilliant. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, I bet this is modeling behaviors that many of the students play in the game, right? You want to see in real life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if you caught this in the video. I don't know if it was shown, but shout out Mario. We got him here. I was with my sister, my mom, one of my nephews in New York City around the holidays last Christmas, and we got to go to the Nintendo store in
Oh,
New York City.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wanted to sneak in and live there, right? Like there's so much fun stuff. I got a lot of great pictures. And shout out to pink hair. I think I've been playing Pokemon Pokopia, and my hair has been pink. It's been blue and purple. And that reminds me of my days in college where my hair changed every color under the rainbow. So
Dang.
super fun. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Social Cipher sounds absolutely awesome. What does it look like for schools to partner, with
Yeah.
your organization and the games that you offer?
Great question. Yeah. So usually especially in this school funded climate, it's really important that, teachers are equipped, teachers and building admin are equipped with like the data they need to make sure that this
Mm,
product is actually going to make a difference for them, and that it's actually going
sure.
to create outcomes, and that, it's something that can be implemented in a way that really sticks. So for us, those pilots, we always do month-long pilots with our schools. They're very important to just establish, a relationship with us where I have a ton of teachers and admins where I'm like, we're texting all the time.
Hmm.
And I think that's like one of the first steps is just figuring that out. In terms of partnering, really we focus on like what are folks' biggest problems when it comes to supporting neurodivergent students. And a lot of the time that's going to come down to stuff like I am like one teacher that has all of these different IEPs and they might have different conflicting needs and accommodations,
Hmm.
or I have to be collecting data constantly on students' social emotional learning. And I am one person. It can also be problems like, with Megan, one of our users who's been one of our users for like 2-3 years now. And she's like, my students are just dysregulated and having these outbursts and these violent behavior incidents all the time where there's chairs and desks getting thrown and classes are being evacuated and kids are feeling unsafe. So those are like a couple of things people are coming to us with. We also have folks that are like, you know, I think we have seen a lot of social emotional learning programs that, might work for neurotypical kids, but I can totally see that my neurodivergent kids are being left behind, or things that they do to help themselves, like stimming or just,
Yep.
being able to engage in special interests is othering them rather than making it like an acceptable tool for regulation. So what we do is we really figure out those problems, we pinpoint them, and the cool thing is we have so much social emotional content now that I can point them exactly to like the type of curriculum and game modules that they should start with, right? Like, so if we have, kids that are getting overwhelmed because there are frequent changes in the classroom, we're going to give them the trying new things and coping with change module, which is all about Ava being on a planet where everything's changing all the time and she has to figure out what coping mechanisms to use at what time. Or if students are having a really hard time with motivation and with saying like, what is the point of what we're doing right now, then I'm going to give them our new executive functioning mini games and the curriculum around that, which is all about helping one of our other characters, Seb, go basically like jump into his little brain domain and defeat these
Hmm.
different challenge critters that represent different emotional barriers to task initiation. So that's usually how it looks. We're very, very flexible. So we are played from anywhere to like a school where they have 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week to practice, over to folks that'll have like an hour and a half twice each week to practice social emotional learning.
Hmm.
We pride ourselves in just how flexible we can work with folks.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, that's just great education, right? Meeting people where they are and personalizing the experience and the solution to them. So, yeah, what a tremendous just opportunity. I want ruckus makers to consider that. My nephew is autistic, and he had a horrible experience in public schools, just the worst. I want to name the school, like, because I don't like them, right? But his brother is still involved in that school system, so I'm not going to name it because I want to protect Silas's experience. But yeah, I just feel so bad for him because they made it seem like he was the problem all the time,
Yeah.
and it got to a point where a kid who just loves learning all the time, is all he wants to do is learn stuff. He would be so nervous to go to school the next day, like the fight, right? And trying to get him to go to sleep and all that. It really harmed his quality of life. Thankfully, they found a school that is for kids like him, and he's thriving like crazy,
I'm
right?
sure. Yeah.
And he hasn't changed. He's the same guy, right?
Yep.
With all his superpowers and all his flaws, but the setting has changed, and that's been all the difference. So I'm trying to double click on why Ruckus Makers should really think about partnering with Social Cipher, because you're just doing such fantastic work and it's meaningful. So
Thank
yeah, thank you for that. ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division, has been a trusted partner for schools for 30 years. At ODP Business Solutions, we're by your side to meet your evolving education needs. Here's the thing about creating remarkable learning spaces: you need a partner who gets it. Someone who understands that transforming education isn't just about swapping whiteboards for smartboards, it's about reimagining what's possible. That's why innovative school leaders trust ODP Business Solutions. We don't just deliver supplies, we help you design dynamic learning environments that make students actually excited to show up. From tech integrations that bring lessons to life to flexible furniture that transforms any space into a collaboration zone, to sustainable solutions that teach by example, we've got everything you need to do school different. And the best part, you can get it all from a single supplier. That helps you simplify ordering and streamline budgeting while staying compliant with easy access to cooperative contracts. However you want to advance, ODP Business Solutions has 30 years of experience helping districts like yours get ahead. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Principals and school leaders know the hardest part isn't the hiring, it's keeping great people from burning out. Frontline Education's 2026 K-12 Lens survey report found that while recruiting and hiring has eased, gaps still remain. Districts that provide structured and sustained professional development are more likely to report better hiring outcomes. In fact, nearly half of districts that use software to automate professional growth report hiring has become easier compared to only 30% of districts who don't. If you're trying to build a campus where people feel supported, connected, and proud to stay, download the full K-12 Lens report and see what's working for districts right now. Go to frontlineeducation.com/leaders. That's frontlineeducation.com/leaders to get the full report. Something that drove me nuts as a ruckus maker was hearing teachers say things like, I taught it, they should have learned it. But really, some teachers just don't know how to teach or reteach for that matter so that all kids get it. That's where IXL comes in. IXL's diagnostic automatically identifies knowledge gaps for teachers and provides them with a personalized growth plan for each individual student. Teachers can step into the classroom every day knowing what their students know and what they don't know. IXL's adaptive platform makes differentiating instruction easy. As students learn, IXL adjusts to the right level of difficulty for each student. Close knowledge gaps and accelerate learning with IXL. Get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. I was talking with a principal last month who'd been wrestling with the same staff problem for 6 weeks. Every Monday, it was on her list. Every Friday, it was still there. She kept telling me she needed more information before she could make the call. Here's what she actually needed. She needed someone to ask her, if you already knew the answer, what would the answer be? That question cut 6 weeks of circling down to about 4 minutes. She made the move that afternoon. And that's the conversation Digital Danny is built for. He's your AI coach, trained on a decade of how I actually work with principals. And he's available the second you need him to think through something. You can get started with Digital Danny at myprincipalcoach.com/ruckus. Cool. How do people find out more? And then I got some questions just about kind of like leading your team, right? And some practical stuff that teachers can do, in their classrooms and that kind of thing. But what's the best way to sort of learn more about Social Cipher?
Yeah, definitely. I was also gonna just add a stat to what you said just to, like,
Yeah,
totally validate it. I'm sure you
sure.
totally, like, know this anecdotally already, but we actually know of a survey that was taken for schools in the UK, and they found that 80% of school avoidant students are neurodivergent, and I think
How
that,
about that?
yeah, that is a clear example of, like, why that's happening. Kids are feeling so unsafe when,
Hmm.
there's underlying needs aren't being met.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when they're treated like they're the problem. But in
Right.
terms of how you can learn more about us, you can find us at our website at socialcipher.com. And that's social cipher, that's cipher with an I, by the way. And that's where you can access our free inclusive resource library, where you're going to find free lesson plans, different like blogs that'll teach you different strategies on being more inclusive to neurodiverse students. That is also where you can actually just create a free account on our platform, try it out for yourself. And if you have more than 10 students, you'll actually be eligible for our free pilot program, which is what I talked about before. And we would
Yeah.
love to have you and, explore fit and be able to just support your kids.
Really cool. Awesome. So you've intentionally built a neurodivergent team, and just talk to me like what's it like, leading this group, and yeah, how do you manage that?
Yeah. So, yeah, we are very proudly majority neurodivergent. And I think a lot of it is just listening to neurodivergent people, number one. And number two, making it safe for them to come to you and talk to you about that. This goes for whether it's students or employees. Like, one of the number one things I can express is like, model, if you are in a position of leadership, model that vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think it has made such a difference when I tell my team, like, hey, I don't have the spoons or the energy to be able to do this right now. I am going to, like, step away to regulate for a little bit. Or, like, I actually, it's really hard for me to process this in writing right now. Can we just, hop on a call real quick and we can do this? I think that just those little glimmers of like, being able to express the ways that you work best and how you needed accommodations, whether you're neurodivergent or not, all of us do. That will just allow for so much more vulnerability between your employees or your students and you. And I think that, yeah, with our team, I mean, them being neurodivergent, I think that's our strength. There have been so many like failed lab experiments or things like this. Like, I am not the first person to have this idea. I think there have been so many different laboratory experiments that have used things like eye tracking or simulations, and they have gotten stuck in the lab. And I think the reason that they've never been able to really scale is because it wasn't led by neurodivergent experience, or even if it did have one or two consultants
Mm.
involved, it wasn't created by like a diversity of neurodivergent people. And when you don't have that, and you can't fully put yourself in the position of the students that are using it at the end of the day. It's really hard to be able to tell nuanced and rich and resonant stories that kids can actually root for and feel represented by, and feel motivation through. So I think that our team, even though, yeah, of course it's going to require us to work differently in some ways or look different than a lot of teams, man, that is our biggest strength, and it will just serve your students who learn differently a whole lot better if you listen to those teachers that learn differently as well.
One thread we pulled on already in our conversation is that idea, right, of not seeing students' behavior as like these deficits, right, but something better, an additive, to the classroom. So do you have any feedback or advice, right, for the Ruckus Maker listening? What they can do at a classroom level, right, to kind of switch that mindset.
Definitely. Yeah. There are a lot of things. I would say that, one of the easiest things you can do is like build in little movement or sensory breaks.
Mm.
That allows, any kid, regardless of neurotype, a time to be able to regulate. And it allows, the kids that really need it, that might be neurodivergent, to just have that time without being like, singled out for it. I think that's great. You can also do something pretty, like, you can always have a desk in the back of the classroom that allows students that just like need to walk around or just need a different change of scenery to be able to like quietly go back there, and that kind of helps serve that purpose for them. And then I think one of the biggest things you can do is just like engage in kids' interests. Like, I think that many neurodivergent kids have these like encyclopedic almost knowledge. I don't, knowledges or knowledge, whatever, there's a plural. They have this encyclopedic understanding of anything from like penguins to Guinness World Records, which is mine. But I like bring that out. I had a forensic science teacher in one of my electives in high school, and one of my fondest and like most confidence building academic memories was when he was like, wow, you are really, really into like DNA identification. Do you want to like teach a little segment to the class? Do you want to like guide them through like a case study? And I was over the moon. Like I did all the prep. I was in my element, and like giving kids the ability to like teach others and build that through the things that, you know, maybe people bully them for, or maybe they're too scared to talk about because they think it'll be weird. That is like one of the biggest unlocks and most impactful things you can do for neurodivergent kids.
Brilliant. You've worked with the Lego Foundation for a while. What's maybe been one or two of the biggest insights you've had partnering with them?
Definitely. Yeah. So, first of all, the Lego Foundation is fantastic. And I think that a lot of people just think the Lego Foundation is like, you know, Lego bricks, which are super cool.
Yeah.
Is so much science and research that goes into that little brick. They have
Mhm.
done some of the most like robust research that I know of in the process, like step by step of how students play, of how like learning happens in the play process and the different types of play. So for us, you know, we came in meeting a lot of their principles of learning through play pretty well. Like, you know, our game is very iterative, it's very engaging and joyful and meaningful. But I think one place where we really built things out with the Lego Foundation was through like creative expression. So with Lego, we worked very closely with their play specialists to create our character creator and our world builder, which do the exact things that, you know, the names say. And we really worked with them to figure out like how can we create, you know, we've already created social emotional learning through like role playing and through like
Hmm.
story driven learning, but how do we do it, how do we help students like learn through building, especially when they're like middle and high school age, right? And so for us, like with the world builder and character creator, it's more than kids just, you know, building things with blocks and building, you know, space pirates. It is prompting kids, you know, let's build your safe space. What does that look like? What elements does it have in it? And like, why did you put those in there? Or when it comes to building the characters, it's like, all right, so you built your character. We've seen all of these different characters in our games that have these backstories. What's your backstory and your motivation? And like, who is your space pirate crew? What traits do they have? And how can you bring those traits? How can you like surround yourself with those traits when it comes to people in real life? So that's really what we've worked deeply with the Lego Foundation on. And yeah, they're just great.
They're great. Awesome. Well, we're at the point of the show where I ask the guests the same three questions. And so the first one being, if you could put one message, Vanessa, on every school marquee around the world for a single day, what would your message be?
Yeah. Okay. I in preparation for this question, I actually created two and I couldn't decide. So we're just gonna pretend there's two marquees everywhere suddenly. Um,
Right on.
so the first one,
Front and back, or left and right. So it's all good.
yeah, there we go, front back. Perfect. I've cheated the system here. Okay, so the first one I would say is like on the marquee, the world won't work without all kinds of minds. And then on the back, neurodivergent doesn't need fixing. And if we're extra spicy, neurodivergent doesn't need fixing, your approach does.
Mm, that's right. How about building your dream campus? If you weren't limited by resources, your only constraint was your ability to imagine, what would be the three guiding principles building Vanessa's dream campus?
Yeah. So I have a firm belief that like self-awareness is everything. Like everything stems from you knowing yourself.
Mm.
It's everything from like what you need to how you react to others to how you like approach challenges and can have a growth mindset. So I would say like one of the guiding principles is how are we developing students self-awareness from day one? The second guiding principle is the idea of diagnosing a need over needing a diagnosis. That's something that I've stolen from the folks at the Lego Foundation and
Mhm.
at NASON, which is the UK's special education national organization. And what I mean by that is like, there is such a vast number, even though diagnoses are increasing, especially among communities of color, where historically, like, they have not been able to get those resources. And for like girls and women, there are still going to be a heck of a lot of undiagnosed neurodivergent kids in these classrooms. Or, there might just be neurotypical kids who just need different things. So for us, it's really important to diagnose needs rather than needing a diagnosis or a label to proceed. It's about meeting kids' underlying needs, like, whether or not that diagnosis is present, so that everyone's feeling safe, feeling supported, and feeling like they belong. And then the third principle is, instead of playing it safe, we make it safe to play.
Mm.
And I think this is especially important for like those middle and high school kids who are getting to that age where in the real world, a lot of the time, this play is discouraged, and it's labeling kids as like, it's labeling people as unserious. But if we're being real, like, play is at the root of like the greatest innovations of all time. And it's at the root of like how we connect and learn with each other. So, infusing play into everything you can instead of just playing it safe and valuing like conformity over confidence.
Right on. Yeah, I think play is infused in everything I'm trying to do. So
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing that. Otherwise, ooh, way too boring, and it feels
Mhm.
it feels it feels like work.
Exactly.
Um, great. So we covered a lot of ground today in our conversation of everything we discussed. What do you think's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
Yeah. I would say like the best thing you can do is listen to your students who learn differently and to make it safe for them to do so. I think that it is amazing that we see more and more educators creating things like calm corners and flexible seating and different like STEM toys for students to be using in class. But you can give kids all of the tools in the world to be able to learn their best with their neurodivergence. But if representation and vulnerability and sharing those experiences is not part of that, then a lot of those tools kind of go out the window. So I
Mm.
think that it's really important that you as ruckus makers are like finding your own representation of neurodivergent people that are on really cool paths that students can look up to, and bringing that bringing that representation into the classroom so that students can understand like all the places that they can go, and that their neurodivergence isn't something to be fixed. It's an asset, and it's a piece of who they are.
Hey, Ruckus Maker, thanks again for pressing play. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. And before you go, if today's show shifted something in your mind or sparked an idea about how you could do school different, then I think you'd be a great fit for what we call the Ruckus Maker Mastermind. The Mastermind's a private community of innovative school leaders who meet weekly to grow, reflect, and disrupt the status quo. You can create the campus experience your staff and students deserve. Applications are now open, and go to betterleadersbetterschools.com/apply to put your application in.